Hello, everyone, and welcome to Leadership Conversations with Bukky, where we explore the stories and strategies of diverse leaders shaping our world. And today we have Yannick Buditu, who pivoted from a head of year role to an educational consultant role. We will be chatting about his journey and mission to bridge gaps in education and helping young people realize their full potential. Yannick, welcome to today's episode. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Bookie. I'm doing well. I'm doing well, thank you. It's getting colder out there, but yeah, I'm doing well,
Uh,
thank you.
Okay, that's great. Well, that's great to hear. And you're right, it is getting colder and darker. But hey, we
Exactly.
move, we move. Okay, so let's get straight into it because there's so many different things that I'd love our audience to hear about you today.
Of
So,
course.
what lived experiences or moments inspired you to focus on equity in education, and how have those moments shaped your vision for Buditu Consulting?
I think for me, one of the main experiences was when I first became a head of year at a secondary school. Um, it was interesting because the perception that I had was one of imposter syndrome. It's like, oh
Mm,
my God, I'm 26-year-old, I'm a middle leader at a secondary school, all this responsibility for my tutors, for students, etc.
mhm,
Whereas another perception that I didn't really consider was the perception of the students. And for them, it was, oh my God, we've got a black member of staff who's a middle leader, who's in a position of both authority, of, pastoral support, etc. And that being highlighted not only by students, but by many parents as well, was an acknowledgement for me to recognize that I've got an opportunity and I'm in a position of doing something to support and benefit, students who look like me, and being very intentional in saying that yes, I see all students, but recognizing that all students don't start from, the same starting positions.
mm,
So, acknowledging, where I've come from and really saying, actually, I need to use my position to ensure that there are equitable chances for, the black students that are in my school to be given a chance that, systemically and in society that wouldn't have been offered them. And I've got a foundation at the school to really push on that. So that was very key for me.
Okay, no, thank you. And thank you for being honest in that as well. It's really interesting though, because I think sometimes when we do things, we don't recognize in ourselves what it is that we offer, but others can easily point that out to us. And it's really interesting about how you said it was the students, the recognition of the students, and therefore the impact that you were actually making, which is really good.
Mm.
So Beditu Consulting offers a wide range of services from mental health championing to special educational needs support and governance. How do you tailor these services to reflect the unique needs of each school or youth organisation?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've found that's made me or contributed to me being a sort of whole rounded educator is the vast experience that I've got within education. I think it's easy to sort of come into education and say, oh, I'm a behavior specialist, or I'm a Senko, or I'm a governor, and whatever else. But I've always tried to be intentional in saying, actually, how can I feed in and how can I learn in, these different areas? So I'm someone that, across the years, I've not always tried to stick in one area, but I've said, okay, I'm going to be a governor for 4 years to see, the experience of being a governor. I'm going to you know, work in terms of behavior, or I'm going to understand a bit more about special educational needs and that field. And, more recently going into attendance and children missing in education.
Mm,
So it's just offering me a whole, a whole sort of plethora of ideas and knowledge that center around education that allows me to often respond to youth organization and schools and say, yes, I can help you with that
hmm
because I'm not limited in terms of my expertise. So I think, that's one of the things that really stands out about me and the service that I offer is that often than not, when there's a need that comes from a school, because of my vast experience, I'm able to support and help with their need.
Yeah, and that's great, and it's great to hear how you've got genuine lived experience because you proactively sought to get involved in these different areas. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting to hear. You run the Too Cool for School, love that name, podcast featuring insights on education, leadership, and youth development.
Mm.
What inspired you to launch it, and could you share a moment or a guest episode that especially captured your vision?
Ooh, what encouraged me to start it?
Mm,
Um, I recall a couple of years ago when the elections were happening, and
okay.
I was having a conversations with some of my friends, different group of friends, with my uni friends, and the friends from the ends, demand them because everyone's we can vote, so it's like, yeah, what's going on? Who you voting for, and whatever else. And because I'm big on education, I recall saying to my friends that I want to look at the educational agendas of each party and what they're trying to do within education because
Mm,
it's important to me not only as a practitioner but as a father of a young child who in 2 3 years time is going to be going into the world of statutory education. It's important that I know what the landscape looks like for him and the intentions of those in power. And it was just amazing having these conversations with my friends, with different groups of friends. And I said to myself, actually, how can we get our community to have more conversations around education, and not
mm,
just education within the classroom, but education on a wider scale and the things that impact education. So, a lot of my episodes that I've done before, um, they're broad, but they all link to education. I've spoken about sickle cell and its impact on students who have sickle cell.
yeah.
I've spoken about adultification, mental health. There's been so many different themes, and we always try to link it in with education. I
Mm,
would say a standout episode for me was having some of my former students
okay.
join me on a guest episode talking about their experience of A levels.
hmm
and and that episode and the engagement on social media was crazy. Like the amount of views and comments and whatever else, it's beyond any of the other episodes that I had. And I recall saying to my friends, I said, "This is crazy. Like my notifications are going off. I'm just getting likes and comments, and like the views are in the hundreds and thousands." And
Wow.
I said, why is that? And I remember my friend saying to me, "It's because it's the voice of the youth.
Mm,
It's the voice of the youth. That's what people want to hear. They don't
okay.
want to hear from the 30, 40 plus educated talking about, oh, A levels is this and you need to do this. But they want to hear from the student who's a year or two above them, or even in the same,
Yeah, same. Yeah,
talking
their
about their
peers.
experiences, their
Yeah,
peers.
immediate peers. Yeah.
And that really highlighted to me, the power of youth voice. And that's an episode that really stood out for me.
Okay. No, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Listeners appreciate how you navigate sensitive themes like trauma, equity, and systemic challenges. How do you create a space that is both thought provoking and supportive in those conversations?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I try to do is, acknowledge and understand that we all have, lived experiences. So it means that, myself and many of the guests that I have, um, who come on, um, have that space where they can talk about their injustices, where they can talk about their their experiences.
Mm,
And it's interesting because you say a safe space, but I think for a lot of my guests, the important thing for them is that they've got a space in the first place.
yeah.
Is that they've been given a platform, and that's one of the things that I try to really highlight is I speak to social workers, clinicians, and students and youth workers, and all of these people who are going through all of these experiences and do so much amazing work, and I'm saying I'm giving you a voice. I'm
Mm-hmm.
giving you a platform so other people can hear about your experiences, the good and the bad, so that
Mm-hmm.
other people can see that through just the conversation with you, they're realizing they're part of a community. Because I've had so many people just after I could release it episode after episode, and I'll get a message. I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
the teacher going through this. Really? How many teachers are there in the UK? But no one talks to anyone.
Yeah.
Offering them a platform, a space in the first instance to just talk about the things that they're going through, to talk about the trauma, to talk about the experiences unfiltered, because
Mm,
it's my platform, so you can
mm,
authentically be you. And I think they appreciate that,
mm-hmm.
and it allows them to feel safe, to feel comfortable, to talk about the experiences.
Thank you. No, thank you, Yannick, for that. You support governance topics like pupil premium strategy and attendance, plus interventions for students at risk of exclusion. Can you talk about the connection between strong governance and student well-being?
100%. I feel like when you've got a governance, or governance team, whether it's in education or you've got accountability through like trustees and those sort of things in
Mhm,
youth organizations, what it does, it allows for accountability within those sectors, and it ensures that those who are in power, those who are in positions of leadership, are being, held to account in order, for in order for us to determine, actually, are you putting the child's, best interest, at heart. And I think one of the experiences that I was able to see firsthand, especially in my position of governance in the academy that I worked for, and I hope that many of the academies are the same, is that the leadership welcomed the challenge. They welcomed the challenge, like, what are we doing? What are we doing that we should be doing? What do we
mm,
need to be doing more of? And at the center of it all was the students' best interest, the
mhm,
students' well-being, and it goes just beyond the the classroom setting, because when you're in governance, you look at pupil premium, you look at attendance, but you also look at safeguarding. You also look at
yes.
the health and safety of the school.
Mhm,
So if there's an issue with a certain classroom, and that classroom cannot be accessed, what is that doing to the culture and the ethos and the well-being of the other teachers when they're limited and they don't have access to a room that could benefit them, or maybe students are being congested, or maybe activities are having to move elsewhere? All of these things impact well-being. And I
mm.
think governance allows us to be able to look at student well-being, but from a broader perspective.
Okay. And you said about how, like the senior leadership team welcome the challenge.
Mm.
So are you therefore saying that where you have a culture within a school, within a setting that always is considering, because I would think that most schools would consider the students' well-being, wouldn't they? What is it? What was it that, for example, the academy that you mentioned, what did they have in place that other school, school settings, educational settings could actually benefit from that allows them to welcome the challenge because they can see the impact it's going to have upon student well-being?
I think one of the things that I saw, and this is just practical,
Mm,
is I was able to go back because the area that I overlooked was pupil premium and attendance.
okay.
I was able to have a meeting with my Link SLT and we did termly reviews and was able to see firsthand recommendations that I put forward being implemented and then seeing the benefits
Yeah,
of
the
that
impact of it.
thereafter.
Yeah. Mm,
Because often what you have, listen, educators are stressed. Imagine you're coming
exactly.
in, you're a member of SOT, you've been working your socks off, and a governor who comes in once a term for his meetings and maybe an additional day to walk around the school, whatever, is saying, actually, do you know what? I've looked at your numbers. You should do this, do that, do this, do that. And they're actually doing it because
Mm,
they're having a discussion and they're saying, actually, do you know what? He's got a point. This is going to benefit us.
mm,
And I saw those benefits. And this is over a span of, 3 years. So I think, just the practical aspects of the recommendations being implemented was a big thing for me. So it
mm.
wasn't just, a talking service, oh, this is what we're going to do, and nothing changes, but it was
Right.
actually being implemented.
Okay. Okay. All right. No, thank you for explaining upon that particular point, Yannick. Your services include emotional regulation and mental health champion roles. How do you help schools and educators weave emotional resilience into daily practice?
Well, I think first of all, we need to look at ourselves as practitioners.
Mm,
Um, Emotional regulation is a learnt behavior, and there are many students and young people that we work to support, whether it's as a result of trauma or as a result of learning need that they don't have the ability or struggle or find it very difficult to regulate themselves. So, as a practitioner, first we need to be able to regulate ourselves.
yes.
And we work in very tense and stressful environments. But we also need to understand that the behaviors that we want to see in the students, we need to be able to reflect that in the first
Hmm.
instance, to show them, to teach them. Okay,
Yes.
breathe in and out, and having those honest conversations where you're saying to a child, you know what, I just need to take a breath. So the child's seeing, oh, I can see that Mrs. Stress. I can see that Sir's stress. He's taking deep breaths. Is heightened. Is understanding how to manage ourselves in heightened behaviors. So the children that we work with can mirror those behaviors.
Mm,
And beyond that, it's an understanding of the fact that, as I said before, that for many children, if you look beyond learning needs, which we can't control, that there's some that have trauma. And trauma is something that is so difficult to explain sometimes that when you see a child's behavior,
mm,
that is the explanation because they cannot communicate it with the words. So it's about practitioners understanding, okay, something's being communicated, and
yeah.
what is being communicated with me means that this child is unable to emotionally regulate. As a practitioner, what then do you do with that information? That is when you need to be intentional to go deeper, to understand, to move those layers. Some kids, it's 5 layers. Other
Yeah.
kids, it's 500 layers. What kind of practitioner are you? Are you a practitioner you get to, 499 and you've given up and it just was the one layer left that would have opened the door for you? So it's
Mm.
about, understanding trauma. I think trauma is a big, big thing, especially when it comes to emotional regulation.
Yeah, no, thank you for mentioning about that and link it a little bit to trauma-informed practice, but also for highlighting about behavior having meaning in that regard. I think while I agree, I think, as you said, something you said earlier, Yannick, is that we're all stressed, we're all under pressure.
Yeah.
How would you advise educators that feel this is like yet another thing on top of all the other things that I've got to do that I've got to take care of? What advice would you give to them about the importance of looking into this? If they are like, say for example, they're very busy and it's like they themselves are stressed, just barely managing their own workloads. Yet there's another thing about this idea of emotional regulation. It is, I haven't got time to stand and just breathe in and out to just demonstrate to this child to do X, Y, Z. What would you say to them if they're thinking, I'm too stressed and too busy to be engaging in this type of thing?
It goes back to a comment that you made, that you said, I don't have time. And that is because the perception of being able to support someone who's dysregulated, often
Mm,
practitioners think, oh, you know what, I don't have time because I need an hour, or I need a
yes.
half an hour,
Hmm.
or I need how are you? That took 2 seconds to
Mm,
say, how are you?
mm,
Are you okay? Breathe.
mm,
That doesn't take a lot of time.
mm,
And that's the thing. We put time constraints on things because we think we need X amount of time.
yes.
But things don't work that way. Even when, I speak to schools and I advise schools and they say, oh, we've given this student 10-minute 10-minute cool down when she's dysregulated. Who says she needs 10 minutes?
Mm, mm.
It
Good
needs to be
point.
fluid. It needs
Yeah,
to be
good point.
fluid because that student, you need to allow the student to say, actually, I know you've given me 10 minutes, but it's been 2 minutes and I feel better now.
Okay. Hmm.
That's regulating because you know when you're better now and you're ready to go back.
Mm,
Or you could say, it's been 10 minutes and I need another five. That's regulating. You
mm.
need to stop putting constraints.
And also from what you're saying as well, Yannick, is actually helping the young person to be able to articulate
Of
as well. So
course,
it's like a two-way thing in that regard. Okay.
definitely.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to come on to, I think we may probably make this the last question actually, because I'm aware of a time. Looking ahead, are there emerging themes, guests, or formats you're eager to explore that could further expand the way we think about education and social change?
Yeah. Um, for me, I think, and this is not to boast, but I think I am that format. I think the platform that I have is the format. I work for a local authority
Hmm.
in London, and I go into an office of hundreds and thousands of skilled practitioners, educational psychologists, Senkos, senior leaders, and whatever else, all all who watch the podcast, all who learn from the guests that I have on.
Hmm.
And in learning from the guests that I have on, they upskilling themselves and they become better practitioners because, as I said, everything that I discuss links back in
To
some
education.
aspect to
Yeah.
education and learning. And I think for me, one of the things that I'm really trying to break through is that ceiling of having more. and more, or having more senior leaders who are in positions of authority
Mm-hmm.
to come and have those conversations on the platform where they can explain why they're thinking of scrapping the EHCP, and not just us hearing it on the news and parents are protesting and having an uproar, but no one is having a conversation why.
Okay. Okay.
I'm offering that platform, and that's always been my long-term goal, is that
Mm.
I want people in positions of leadership, government, DOV to say, actually, we want to know what the community think about this change or this thing that we want to implement in education. Yannick is tapped into that community. We
Mm.
want to be on his platform, because I can't tell you whether people always listen to BBC News and whatever else, because everyone's on, social media scrolling up and down and whatever else. But I guarantee you that I could put up a post about something that BBC reports. I put a poll on it, and people are engaging in their poll. People are now sending me messages. Oh well, I think X, Y, and Z. Why? Because they engage with me and my platform. So I
Mm.
would say I think I'm that format.
You're doing it. I love that, and I think that's a really powerful way to end
Yeah.
actually this interview. Yannick, thank you. You know what? I wish we had more time. I really wish we had more time because this is a really powerful. I mean, not only is it uplifting, but we've had an opportunity just to drill deep into your why, what you're doing, and also the wider impacts, the community impact with not just the young people, but parents, carers, everyone basically that's involved in education in one way or another. Okay, so thank you again, Yannick.
Thank
Um,
you very much for having me.
I really appreciate you. And for our listeners that have joined and stayed to this part of the episode, we will actually link to Yannick's social handles in the show notes so you can actually learn more about Yannick. And I'd definitely say please engage with him. Listen to the podcast as well. Because the really interesting guests, range of guests, and the things that are explored. Thank you for tuning in for this episode, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care, everyone. See you soon. Bye.
It's the lack of pre-prepared content in the playful area is the issue. Because teachers do not have the time to go and be building it themselves. And that's just the truth.
Okay.
There is, when you are teaching full time, there's very little time to actually be learning new things or applying new things or creating things from scratch. You have to be using pre-made things, either stuff you've made previously when you did have more time to do it, stuff that your peers have made previously, or things that have been like tools that have been bought for you to use for that thing.